I wanted to build this table because I got a new office space and I had to do something to make it stand out, to make it more interesting, and the table in there was just this boring thing made up out of MDF, and I was surrounded by tools and wood and all kinds of fun things to play with, and I thought, let's use that. Let's do it. Let's do something creative, and then I'll be able to look at it every day while I work. First thing I had to do after picking out the walnut pieces I wanted was to get them all down to an even size, basically. So I started out with jointing them, trying to get one straight true edge. Then I ran them through the table saw so that I'd have two straight true edges. And then after that I did a lot of planing. A lot of planing.
Long explanation. I don't need no long explanation.
So once everything was planed down, so all the boards had the same thickness and the joints were straight, I glued the table up in two pieces, actually.
If you need me, just call me, I'll be there. I need you, don't know why that's no fair. You're whispering in someone else's ear. You can crawl back into bed with me, my dear. When you're out all night, treat me like a fool. It's not alright, waiting there for you. I don't need no long explanation. I don't need no long explanation. My head is full of useless information. So I don't need no long explanation.
As you're clamping it all together, the tighter you put the clamps on, the more the glue is going to seep out. So you just have to make sure you've got like a wet towel standing by, just wipe off anything that comes out. The nice thing about it is, even if you do get some glue dots hanging out there, once it's dry you can just scrape them off with a scraper. To be able to run it through the time saver, but our time saver can only do a 36-inch wide table only, and the table itself ended up being about 42 inches. So I glued it up in two halves, and we ran the two halves through the time saver, and then when they were both even, then I got to put them together using biscuits. So use a plate joiner to drill a slot, or several slots all along the length of the table, and then you stick the biscuits in with glue and clamp it all up again.
Lizzie, how'd you get so cool? Out on the porch, drinking beer, skipping school, listening to progressive on a gloomy afternoon. Lizzie, come back to life.
One of the hardest parts about clamping it together with the biscuits is when you put the two halves together, the tighter you clamp it, the more likely you are to get it to bow in the middle. So you have to, for one thing, clamp it carefully. You can make sure you've got clamps on the top and the bottom, because that'll help keep it straight. It also helps to have a little extra weight to put on it while you're clamping. If it starts to bow up, whatever you've got, if you've got anything you can throw on top of it to help hold it down, that'll help. We gave it another sanding, got it nice and smooth. We had, filled any big holes or anything like that with epoxy, just because we're going to be writing on the table, so you want it to be relatively smooth. And then I basically undid all of that work to make it smooth and said I want to engrave the top with our logo. And for that, because I'm not that good with a chisel, I decided to use the CNC router, because you can pretty much do whatever you want with it. After the logo was carved in the top, I decided to finish the table on the actual legs, just so that we wouldn't have to, carry the tabletop around and risk damaging it or anything like that. So after the router, we put it on the legs, and I decided to go with just black steel pipe for the legs, gas pipe, because I wanted it to have sort of that rustic industrial look. So went to Home Depot, had them cut and thread the pipe to the right length, and then we just assembled the frame for it and used wood screws to attach the legs to the table. And once that was done, it was pretty much ready to be finished. In this case, ready to be finished means that first I had to fill in these like gaping holes I had created with the router. When it engraved our logo, obviously you can't write on a desk that's full of voids, so it had to be filled in, and I decided to fill it in with a product called Ardex, which is a concrete product. It's like a very fine concrete powder. After the concrete set, I gave it a good sanding, cleaned up all the concrete. Anywhere that I didn't want concrete, just sanded off. Or I found out, honestly, that you can just wipe it off with a wet towel if it's not too thick. It comes off fairly easily, so that's nice. Gave it a good sanding, got rid of all the dust and everything, and I decided to finish it with Minwax polyacrylic, which is a water-based polyurethane. And the big reason for that is it doesn't smell nearly as bad as regular polyurethane, and it cleans up with soap and water instead of mineral spirits. So that is the final coat on the table, is polyacrylic. We did, I think, 4 coats of that with a little bit of light sanding in between, and it's a satin finish, and I think it looks fantastic. Honestly, the hardest part about this build was figuring out exactly what size table legs I needed. And I know that sounds ridiculous given like the amount of, you know, woodworking and crazy concrete things that went into it, but the hardest part for me was calculating what I wanted the framework of the legs to look like, how tall I wanted the table, and then exactly what pieces I would need to buy and how long they'd need to be cut in order to get it. So that was the hardest part, is figuring out the table legs.
When the lights went out,
The most rewarding part of this build was the look on other people's faces when it was done, because I am surrounded by woodworkers who know everything about wood and joinery techniques, and like they're so far more advanced than I am, it's unbelievable, and they're extremely talented. And then I come in here with this idea and I'm just like, I want to glue a bunch of boards together, and I'm going to use this really nice black walnut that has these really wonderful characteristics, and then I'm going to cover it in concrete. And like to a T, every single person I told about this said, "You're gonna what?" and looked at me like I was crazy because I was gonna ruin this beautiful black walnut table that I had put all this effort into. And so when it was all finally said and done and everybody was looking at it, the reaction was pretty much surprise that it turned out looking so nice, that I didn't ruin the black walnut, and that the concrete actually enhances, like the engraving in the concrete adds to the look of this beautiful piece of woodwork. That for me was the most satisfying part, was getting that gratification from everybody who kind of looked at me sideways and said, "That's never gonna work." It was really nice to feel like, yes, it worked, and it worked well. I done good.